Bilateral cooperation on the table as President Tinubu arrives China.
Load rejection. FG commits $800 million to construction of electricity substations and distribution lines nationwide.
NNPC Limited admits facing financial strain due to premium motor spirit supply.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the 50% electricity subsidy for public universities and hospitals. Plus, engineering profession and Nigeria's prosperity.
Public universities and hospitals in Nigeria have long struggled with a high cost of electricity with its significant impact on their operations and services.
Now, that's true, Demola. Before the 50% subsidy announcement, these institutions faced exorbitant electricity bills. Electricity costs accounted for a substantial portion of their budgets, often ranging from 20% to 50% of total expenses.
Insufficient government funding and allocation left institutions unable to cover electricity cost, leading to accumulated debts and disconnection. Indeed, service disruptions, frequent power outages, and disconnections hindered academic and healthcare activities, compromising the quality of education and patient care.
Now, the high cost of electricity diverted funds from essential services, research, and staff development, affecting the overall performance of institutions. Lack of resources and expertise led to insufficient energy consumption practices, which have further exacerbated the financial burden on these institutions.
The high electricity cost disproportionately affected vulnerable populations, including students and patients who relied on these institutions for critical services. Electricity tariff hikes added to the financial strain in institutions.
Now, Naira devaluation increased the cost of electricity as many institutions relied on imported equipment and services. The 50% subsidy by the federal government aims to alleviate these challenges, enabling public universities and hospitals to focus on their core mandates and improve services to Nigerians.
So, what does this subsidy mean for the average Nigerian? How will it impact the quality of education and healthcare services? What are the potential challenges and opportunity arising from these policies? Well, our guest will provide answers to all the questions as we beam our searchlight on groundbreaking initiatives aimed at revitalizing two critical sectors, education and healthcare. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. I am Ademola Adeoye.
Very critical sectors, like I said, education, healthcare. So, welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria. We would also be focusing on the engineering profession and Nigeria's prosperity, where top engineers and key players will gather to shape the future of the profession. I'm Ray John. Let me also welcome you to today's program. It's a Monday. We're reaching you live on the network service of the NTA right here in Abuja. And just before we get started with the conversation and, of course, all the highlights on the program, let's get the morning news from Dennis Adekunloye. Dennis, good morning to you.
Good morning, Yenre and Ademola. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. President Bola Tinubu is in Beijing, China for an official visit. During the visit, the president will be engaging President Xi Jinping on how to improve bilateral cooperation between the two countries, after which a memorandum of understanding will be signed. Besides his meetings with Chinese business leaders, President Tinubu will visit Huawei Technologies and the China Rail and Construction Corporation as Nigeria looks to construct the Abuja-Ibadan rail line. President Tinubu, who is also the chairman, ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, will also participate in the opening ceremony forum on China-Africa cooperation at the Great Hall. Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, is in Bali, Indonesia, to represent President Bola Tinubu as head of Nigeria's delegation to the second Indonesia-Africa Forum.
Nigeria is open for business. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been very consistent in that. He has said that all investors are welcome to Nigeria. We are putting a Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council to help businesses outside Nigeria to come and flourish in our country.
NNPC Limited has acknowledged recent reports in some national newspapers regarding the company's significant debt to petrol suppliers. A statement by Olufemi Soneye, Chief Corporate Communications Officer, NNPC Limited, indicates that the financial strain has placed considerable pressure on the company and poses a threat to the sustainability of fuel supply. He, however, says, in line with the Petroleum Industry Act, NNPC Limited remains dedicated to its role as the supplier of last resort, ensuring national energy security. The company, he reiterated, is actively collaborating with relevant government agencies and other stakeholders to maintain a consistent supply of petroleum products nationwide. And to address cases of load rejection by electricity distribution companies, the federal government says $800 million will be released for the construction of new substations and distribution networks under the Presidential Power Initiative. Minister of Power Adebayo Adelabu says the money will ensure the construction of substation for Lot 2 substations and distribution lines for Lot 3 at the cost of $400 million each. The Power Minister, who is on a facility tour of a power company in China, explains that Lot 2 of the project covers Benin, Port Harcourt and Enugu distribution companies' franchise areas, while Lot 3 covers Abuja, Kaduna, Jos and Kano distribution companies' franchise areas. Industry records show that recently the distribution companies rejected 1,400 megawatts of power, a development which the Power Minister laments, more so as the federal government sustains its commitment to ramping up generation to 6,000 megawatts by December this year. The federal government has formalized a collaboration with the Africa Fertilizer and Agribusiness Partnership to improve the food security of the country. The initiative was signed under the supervision of the Office of the Vice President and the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security.
We begin to now decipher and bring out the core areas of need that the farmers want, and we can begin now to more or less target the people who ought to benefit from what we are doing.
Also, there's a need for more capacity development amongst those who distribute fertilizer.
And those are the highlights of the news at this time. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Ademola and Ienre after this break. Please don't go away.
From the Atlantic across the savannah to the Sahara, we rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree, we sway in colors, with undying demand. We make solutions, we ignite passion, yeah. Ethnicity is unique, we have more than just a nation.
We are Nigeria, strengthening unity. We know they carry light. We are Nigeria together.
I am the real Nigerian. Brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
Wow! Your baby is here! Congratulations!
Do not waste time. Put your baby to breast within the first 1 hour of delivery to give that first yellowish milk colostrum. Colostrum has all the important nutrients your baby needs to start a healthy life. Colostrum also helps to protect your baby against diseases. Remember, put your baby to breast within the first 1 hour of delivery. This message is from the Anrin Project, Federal Ministry of Health.
In a world hungry for goodness, with a splash of golden Terra oil, a mom can transform a frown into a smile. Make a lunch hour a happy hour. Change no thanks into yes please. Provide care when our nearest and dearest needs it most. And resolve family feuds without blowing a whistle. Providing tasty, nourishing family meals is all that matters. The world needs moms, because where there are moms, there is hope, happiness, and love. Golden Terra Oil, or pure love.
Some say learning is fun, but as a mom, I see how demanding it can be for my child. That's why I ensure he starts every day with a cup of Bonvita. Bonvita. Prepare them to win every day.
Imagine a world where your potential isn't limited by your bank account, where your financial dreams can become reality. That world is here with the Nigerian Consumer Credit Corporation scheme, Credico. Credico is one of President Tinubu's initiatives designed to put the power of consumer credit in the hands of working Nigerians. Here to help you achieve your goals, whether it's providing for your family or expanding your home or business. Visit www.credico.ng today for details. This is the renewed hope.
A new edition of TV Guide is out.
This time, we got up close and personal with the transformational legislator, the Deputy President of the Senate, distinguished Senator Barrel Jibrin.
We've created a difference in terms of representation through interventions that have brought an unprecedented infrastructural development to my area.
This edition is a compendium of mind-blowing stories for your reading pleasure, ranging from technology, entertainment, economy, media, politics, family, and lots more.
It is indeed a park of excitement as we take you through every aspect of life. Pick up your copy and get abreast with issues and trending features within our space.
TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
We must all join hands to work hard so that we build a country for our grandchildren.
My hope is that we develop this nation where every citizen is given his due right. There is transparency, honesty, and integrity.
Put the interests of this country first and foremost. Interests of Nigeria is being one nation, one people.
The need, if I mean, to put things right, things that have gone wrong before, to try and put right. For this, for the love of country.
Thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Up next on the program is Newspaper Review.
All right, we'll take a look at the headlines and some of the dailies that we have this morning, beginning with the New Telegraph this morning. I'm sure you have the leadership there.
Yes, I have the leadership, but
okay, so
you just start off.
All right, so the New Telegraph here leads with Tinubu declares war on bandits, orders military chiefs to relocate to Sokoto. The rider, residents celebrate president's directive. And quickly looking away from that, fuel crisis to persist as NNPC Limited admits $6 billion debt. The rider article calls for oil giants listing on stock exchange. Details on pages 4 and 26 of the New Telegraph. And this one here, coming from a clergy. Better things are ahead, says Adeboye, recalls days of Nigeria Airways. That's on page 7. And of course, we have the minister talking here. Inhuman treatment, Tunji Ojo orders probe into Afukang Custodial Center. And that's also on page 7. Looking away from that, below the picture stories, right here we can see the picture of the president on his arrival at the Beijing International Airport yesterday. And of course, we have hope rises for diaspora voting rights as National Assembly moves to pass bill ahead of 2027 polls. A new U.S. aviation law deletes Nigeria from Category 1 status. You don't want to find out what that is all about? Pages 2 and 6 will guide you. NDLEA seizes 17.9 billion naira drugs from India at Tinkan One ports. That's on page 30. Alleged jumbo pay, Serap drags Akpabio Abbas to court. Page 6 has that. And in the red strip, we have this: men with high-risk HPV tied to infertility, according to a study. And that's on page 27. Quickly looking away from the New Telegraph now, let's see what the People's Daily has this morning. If this is people-centered, the People's Daily leads with Operation Flush Out Bandits. Defense Minister orders CDS service chiefs to storm Sokoto. The Riders says we can't tolerate this anymore as NAF kills terrorist kingpin, 5 others in Kaduna. You want to see what that is all about. And then building collapse kills woman, injures 2 children in Kano. Not a good one. And just beside that story, North Central APC stakeholders differ with Governor Sule over Ganduje's endorsement. And just like the incident in Kano, another one here says 2 children die, 7 injured in Lagos-Abeokuta Expressway accident. Very sad stories there. And below that, Bauchi governor appoints 68-year-old Haruna as 17th emir of Ningi. Of course, the report, or if you like the statement by Atiku, is also right here on the People's Daily about listing NNPCL on the stock exchange in order to comply with PIA. On flood, police confirm boat capsized in Bauchi, 3 people rescued, 2 missing. All right, so that's the march on the front page of the People's Daily this morning.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Let me just, I have the leadership newspaper with me, and just above the nameplate, we have Dayaya emerges 17th Emir of Ningi. Details of that story can be found on page 23. The recapitalization, 5 banks expend 23 billion to raise 1 trillion naira. Details of that story can be found on page 7. Northern-Southern elders disagree over new constitution. Afenifere Ohaneze, Middle Belt want new constitution. ACF Pandef seek amendment, power sharing. Details of that major headline is on page 4. And just beside it, we have petrol import cost. NNPC admits financial strain. Details on page 29. Buratai calls for unity as command old students reunite. That story is on page 24. Federal government investigates hunger in prisons. That's a serious one. Details of that story can be found on page 7. An article demands listing of NNPCL on stock exchange. We have details on page 6. And that's all we have for the headline this morning. Maybe we just, since we have 2 discussions this morning, we just go straight to our discussion, and we just take a break now. After the break, we'll begin our discussion. Stay with us.
President Bola Tinubu has approved the suspension of import duties and tariffs on rice, maize, and other essential food items for the next 5 months. The president has also approved the suspension of import duties on pharmaceutical raw materials and equipment. This will help bring down the prices of food and drugs across the country. All hands are on deck to ensure that things get better for all Nigerians. This is the renewed hope.
Nta Television College Jos, with a pedigree of producing indelible professionals in the media space and an affiliate of the prestigious Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, for the award of degree in mass communication, calls on prospective candidates to leverage on the following courses it offers for 2024-2025 academic session. BSc Mass Communication, those with minimum admissible score of 180 and above who sat for the 2024 JAMB/UTME and direct entry, while 100 to 179 minimum admissible score can apply for the National Innovation Diploma NID in Film and Television Production, Broadcast Journalism and Television Engineering. For more inquiries, visit our website or call 0803 383 4343. Announcer, Registrar.
Can you smell the 5 million naira?
Yeah. We can.
Can you smell the 5 million naira? Yeah. Name something that might be a deal breaker for you in a romantic relationship.
Trust.
Heating. I would say small D. Mommy, are you shy?
It can't see. We are coping.
Oluwa Seun.
No pressure.
Pressure to what?
No pressure.
2 strikes.
No pressure.
Name a way most people get over their ex.
Crying.
So they said.
Nigeria means a lot to me.
And Nigeria means peaceful cohesion.
My country.
We continue to pray, and then hopefully we will come to understand that unity of purpose, unity of living together.
Our ethnic beliefs and background and culture is our strength.
Ever since the amalgamation period of 1914 to date, about 109 years ago, the people of Nigeria live very peacefully with one another.
I think diversity helps a lot to enhance robust development in Nigeria.
All over the country, you have so many ethnic groups, over 250. That is enough to tell you that this is a blessed country that, God has kept, together as one indivisible entity.
All right, this is still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. And to begin our conversation on electricity subsidy for public universities and hospitals, let's quickly take a look at this background report put together by our correspondent, Ibrahim Dan Hamidu.
To alleviate the financial burden of high electricity bills on public universities and hospitals, President Bola Tinubu has approved a 50% electricity subsidy. This initiative aims to enhance the quality of education and healthcare services in Nigeria. What does this mean? Over 200 institutions will benefit from this subsidy, impacting millions of students and patients. Universities will now have more funds to invest in research, improve infrastructure, and enhance the overall student experience. Hospitals, on the other hand, will reduce operational costs, upgrade equipment, and provide better patient care, especially in emergency and intensive care units. The government's implementation plan is to collaborate with the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission (NERC) to implement the subsidy, and the funding will come from the national budget, ensuring a sustainable and consistent support mechanism. What are the benefits to public universities and hospitals? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will discuss the implementation of this initiative and how public universities and hospitals can maximize the benefits of this federal government initiative.
Well, thank you very much, Hamidu, there for the background there. Now, joining us to begin our conversation this morning, borders on electricity subsidy for public universities and hospitals. Let me introduce here in the studio for the first time. Let me just launch him. That is Mohammed Mahmood Raji. Is the professor of neurosurgery and Chief Medical Director, National Hospital, Abuja. Prof, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, we also have another professor joining us, but this time via Zoom, and female. It's a pleasure to welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, all the way from Benin City via Zoom, Professor Lilian Salami, the Vice Chancellor of University of Benin. Good to have you again, ma'am. Good morning to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We want to stay with you, Professor Lilian, because we know that you are the chairman of universities' vice chancellors. So let's just get your view. How did your association actually receive the news of the subsidy? You know, just recently, about a few weeks ago, we have different university students protesting over this rationing of electricity in their campuses and all that. But with this subsidy now, how did you receive the association? How did you receive the news?
Thank you very much. I think to put our place on record, we want to most sincerely thank the Mr. President, His Excellency, for at least taking this position and his positive dispensation to our plight. However, I want to put place on record how we got to where we are now, if you permit me. When this came on board, that's the increased tariff in April. We actually took a position as the CVC, and then we wrote to His Excellency through our Honorable Minister that once this is implemented, we are going to have very university or the governance of the university. Vis-a-vis, the lack of funds to actually pay, and that a lot of universities may actually go bankrupt. And then the second effect actually we felt would be even when a lot of us worry about the output of research carried out in universities, that this was going to bring a total, closure to research output from the university. And thirdly, that it will lead to unrest, whether by staff and students. That was our position. And then we went on to give possible, remedies in how to deal with this increase in subsidy, tariff, and that the universities actually would prefer a situation where either we return to status quo, one, or have a special dedicated tariff for universities, bearing in mind of our peculiarity and then the lack of funds that we are dealing with in the system. And thirdly, also, that the government could actually empower universities to drive and get alternative electricity resources to the university. So these were the positions that we actually, sent through our Honorable Minister to His Excellency, Mr. President. So we are happy that something has come out of that. And so we want to most sincerely thank His Excellency, the President, over this 50% subsidy to the high increased tariff. And I'm sure as the discussion will...
Many thanks, Professor Salami, for your opening comment as regards this. Let's get back here in the studio. We have joining us now for the conversation, Jide Ojo, Public Affairs Analyst. Many thanks for joining us, sir.
My pleasure.
All right. But let's hear the views of Professor Muhammad Mahmood Raji on this subsidy. Sometime back, the National Hospital, experienced blackouts as a result of, inability to pay electricity bill, generator not functioning optimally, and all of that. So, with this news, what would be your take? You think it's the right step in the right direction?
Let me join my distinguished Vice Chancellor, the Chairman of the Vice Chancellors, to really commend the President of the Republic of Nigeria for taking this wonderful step. As far as we are concerned, it's a huge, huge, huge relief, actually. It's not, would have wished to have more, but at least what we have is really, really very good. I'll take you down the memory lane. Early this year, we had to write a letter from the National Hospital to our coordinating Minister of Health, to the Permanent Secretary. That was even before the tariff was raised in April. So we stated that from the 2nd of January to the 25th of March, even without the tariff, we have spent close to £500 million on generation of electricity, from the bills of grid and buying diesel. And that is not just unique to the National Hospital. It's what afflicts all the tertiary hospitals, and I would say all the hospitals in the country. And with the scarce resources we have, it would be difficult for you to really pay from the subventions from the government to pay this. So it has brought a lot of strain. And then mind you, when you look at a hospital, it's different from operating some ordinary offices. An office would open from 8 in the morning, closes at 4, and then likely, even if you have to push it, it gets to 5 or 6. But in the hospital, there has to be like 24 hours. And not only 24 hours, there are some machines that you never ever should switch off. If you switch off, the cost of bringing them back on will be so enormous. And then there are some machines that when you switch them off, it costs lives. For instance, when you are talking about our incubators for babies, the ventilators that some patients are in the ICU, like in National Hospital now, we have like 5 to 6 ICUs. There are times when all these ICUs will be on, patients will be on ventilators, they will be full. So you can imagine a light going off for up to 30 minutes, the batteries may not last up to 30 minutes. So it means a life would go. So it's quite disturbing. And then when the tariff got raised from April, the bill became too astronomical, so that it became completely unrealistic for hospitals to pay. So we really had to be crying out to our coordinating minister, to the Minister of State, to the Permanent Secretary, and I really must commend them for what they have done. They have been up and doing. Virtually in every forum that they are able to appear, they would voice out our cries. And I'm aware that there are a series of meetings that have been taking place with the Ministry of Power in this regard, 1 or 2 of which I happen to be privileged to be a part of. And that has been pushed now to the presidency, along with what the educational sector has also been going through and what they've been pushing. We can now see that the collaboration had worked. And that tells me that the current government is a listening government, and we are really happy that they're able to listen to us and do this. This not only affects us as the CEOs or staff of these hospitals and educational institutions, but it also assists the ordinary Nigerian.
Well, thank you very much for your opening remarks there, Professor Mahmood, the Medical Director of the National Hospital, Abuja. Thank you so much. Let me just bring in Gidi Ojo into this conversation. You have heard about the subsidy, and also you've been listening to the conversation so far. What impact do you think will have this removal, this subsidy that the government has given to the public sector, that is the education and the health sector? What kind of impact will it have on the quality of delivery of services in these two critical institutions?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians. I think I join my senior colleagues on the panel to appreciate the administration of President Bola Tinubu for coming up with the idea of the 50% subsidy. But let's look at the future. I don't think you can keep that, even the 50% that is expected by those institutions to be offset. How do they offset it? Let me give you the instance of University of Lagos. I'm a proud alumni of University of Lagos, graduated in the early 90s. The Vice Chancellor said the energy bill alone is 1 billion. 1 billion. That's public. The one by Eco Electricity Distribution Company, out of which they paid 180 million. So even if the government intervenes and give them 500 million, there will still be a shortfall of 320 million as at now.
Is it monthly or yearly?
Well, I don't know for how long they accumulated that. But what I learned, and it's in the news, University of Lagos was disconnected by electricity last week. So the bottom line is that I think, particularly for our universities, we need to find a lasting solution. For instance, why should we have universities with sciences, technology-based courses, and with the liberalization, if I can call it, in the energy sector, that individuals, communities, companies can now invest in electricity, generate, distribute, and consume. I think our universities need to lead the pack. Even if it will cost them like 5 billion now, if they need to go and borrow money to be off the national grid, if each of these federal state universities could have self-sufficiency in energy production, that is when they will be off this. Because there is no guarantee that this electricity tariff in another few months or year will not be increased. And that brings us, that's number one. That brings us to the idea of, can the current funding mechanism for our hospitals and the universities or tertiary institutions, can it sustain them? Because just like Prof said, again, let me give you the example of University College Hospital Ibadan. Was it last year or early this year? The light of UCH was also disconnected for when about 490 million. And the institution wanted to start charging electricity bill on the patient, and they had to be stopped. Now, how do you run an hospital without electricity? How do you run an academic institution without electricity? And if the billing is so high, you will not also be able to provide the social service, because these are social services. Education, health is under the social services. So I think government needs to be, yes, 50% reduction, good way to start. But what does the future, can we have a roadmap, can we have a blueprint of what will make each of these hospitals, each of these universities to be self-sufficient, so that they don't even have to be built? There have been so much talk about energy mix oh, solar, everybody, there are people who are saying go solar, go solar, go solar. Can solar power an hospital sustainably? Can we look at wind or any other source of energy that will not expose them? Because now that the energy sector has been privatized, you cannot ask those discos not to charge cost recovery price for their product unless you are going to continue to subsidize. And in as much as the value of the currency has depreciated, they themselves will have to, from time to time, because they're also owing banks in billions. They're also owing banks. And some of them, in fact, Amcor has taken over one or two of them because of they defaulted in repayment of their debts to banks. So we need to find a more creative way, a sustainable way to deal with this energy crisis in the social sector.
Many thanks, Judy Oje. You have made a very valid point, and I would like Professor Lillian Salami to respond, to your point about universities thinking about generating their own electricity. You would expect that for a school like University of Benin, you have a very vast faculty of engineering.
Exactly.
Maybe instead of running to the federal government to get subsidy, why not look inward to see how you can be able to generate electricity? Even not, some Nigerians have said, even if it's not to cover the whole institution, at least certain parts of the institution can be covered by electricity generated by the school. I want to find out your response about that. And then some Nigerians also think that the universities charge fees from students that should be able to cater for some of these expenses. And then universities run businesses too. So tell us, why are universities unable to pay electricity bill despite fees and businesses that they run? And then why are you not looking out for generating your own electricity without depending on the national grid?
Thank you very much. First of all, universities don't charge tuition. What we charge, we call them school charges because they are actually aggregated into the different subheads. So we really don't charge. And then that university gets so much, I can tell you, without much effort, that universities are actually running on very tight budget. So we don't have that much to pay. And then a situation where the 50%, like I said, we welcome that. But let me quickly just illustrate using my own university. I am sure that is what happens to almost every university. So before this hike, we were paying about 80 million per month. And then the hike brought us to about 280 million, even, in an increment of about 200 million. So we actually be this at the Benin Electrical Distribution Company from our own end here, and actually, I discussed with them how we can really get out of this, do some level of settlement. So we had roundtable discussions until a point where we even had to go to court, and that didn't work. Then we came back. Now, if we get, for instance, the 50% subsidy that the federal government has graciously given now, or planning to give, that brings it to 140 million a month for us. And then, because of the backlog, which of course all of us are also dealing with, I had to over a period of 7 months, which of course was about 350 million. But some other universities, they are running into billions of naira. So that means every month I'm going to have to pay 190 million. Now, I don't have that kind of resources, and I don't think any university has that kind of resources. So those who think that what we're getting from students, we are not charging fees. If we charge fees, I am sure we'll be able to sustain and pay our bills. But right now, we are not. We are only, having school charges. And these school charges, like I said, have their own subheads that they go to. That is one. The second thing is, can we actually be able to generate our electricity? And a lot of people, I have read that there are professors. What are they professing? We have professors. It's not easy to come by to become a professor. The second thing I always ask such persons or critics is that, do we ever sit back to think of our professors going outside the shores of this country, and they are performing wonders, having breakthrough in research work. What may have happened to such professors? It's not that something to matter. The fact, have any one of us really gone to, has anyone the universities to see what the laboratories that we are actually expecting these professors to do magic, breakthroughs? So the issue is that the environment, the school and even resources are not there. You expect a professor that is getting maybe 400,000 naira at the peak to be able to carry out going to work. We are talking about electricity. How do we run a system where you don't have electricity and you want research output? People talk about, can't we develop our own alternative electricity? Of course we can, if we have the conducive environment. And that is why I actually initially gave our own position when CVC wrote to His Excellency on what can be done. If we have the resources and somebody says to us, go ahead and work and find, alternative electricity source. Of course, you have professors that are capable, of doing such and carrying out such research in universities. But the resources are not there. The environment, actually does not allow for that kind of ingenuity or, novelty to come out of institutions. So we are here, and then it's difficult to really run the universities where we are right today. So the electricity bill, it is not possible. Even with the 50%, I can almost tell you that everyone is still going to be shouting that we cannot really pay our electricity bill, even after the 50%. Like I said, University of Benin, 190 million, if we do the quick arithmetic. Where are we going to get that? I don't think we have that kind of resources. So it's going to be, something has to be done and has to be done. And I think one of our positions is either the government is going to enable the universities to come up with alternative electricity source, or give us special tariff. Even the ad initial one where we're paying 69 naira per kilowatt, we couldn't even sustain that. It was difficult for universities to pay that. In my case, the 80
Professor Lillian, sorry to interrupt your flow of thought, but if I listened to you carefully, you talking about the challenges in the university environment, not being conducive, reasons why professors cannot, venture into such research and all of that. Would that also mean that the students who are being, trained in such universities are also not being given the required, training that they need, to be able to excel in life when they leave? I'm just thinking.
Yeah. The discussion you brought up is whether we're able to develop alternative electricity. In terms of training, and of course, we do not compromise the quality of our students. And that is why when they also go out globally, they actually perform, exceptional in their, competition. So we're not discussing, I'm not saying that we are compromising. The fact is, you cannot take up research to the level where we are expecting that universities should be able to drive and come up with alternative. And that's where I brought that issue of, we can't do just of the, environments that we have. But to think that our students, no, we do not compromise, training our students, and that is why they are competitive when they are outside the shores of this country, and even within the country. So we do not compromise the quality of our students. That is far, we cannot do that, because all of us are working to ensure that we produce graduates are not only futuristic, but are able to compete anywhere in the world.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Lillian, for your contribution there. So let's come back to the studio. Professor Mahmoud, you've listened to Jide and Professor Lillian, and one of the salient points that they raised is probably looking for alternative, to generating electricity so that they can be able to manage effectively because of paucity of funds. Are you also advocating for a special tariff for hospitals as well. And what are the likely challenges that the hospitals are likely to face in the light of this subsidy?
You see, basically the health sector as well as the educational sector have a couple of similarities. We are all social services.
Yeah.
And we do not charge, like she said, they do not charge fees. So also what we charge is not commensurate to the service that it's been delivered. A typical example is, for instance, our cancer center, where we give radiation therapy only. We used to charge 300,000. It jacked up to 600,000. It jacked up to about 800,000. As at last year, November, by the time I asked my team to do an appropriate costing, it was going to cost 1,600,000 per area. But we were charging that low tariff of 800,000 so that the ordinary Nigerian will be able to access care. Even then, patients who are on NHIS and a special program called Cancer Health Fund, they were being charged 300,000. Can you imagine how much we are losing per patient? So that means for you to pay even that ordinary, even before this rise in tariff, I told you the amount of money you were paying within in less than 3 months, ₦500 million naira. Where would you get that money from? Typically, for instance, like in National Hospital, what we were getting per month is 60 million naira for diesel, 60 million naira for grid. That's 120 million per month. Right? Sorry, that's per year, per annum. That's the whole budget per annum. We sometimes pay 150 million to generate electricity per month, even before the rise in tariff. So in April, when the first bill came, they charged us 116 million, in addition to diesel cost of about 90 million. Of course, it means for us to source that money, we would have to deprive paying people who have supplied us medications, that's drugs, people who have supplied consumables in the lab, people who have supplied consumables in the theater. So it becomes a vicious cycle. If you don't pay a contractor in some of these other segments of the hospital 2 or 3 or 4 months, or 2 or 3 or 4 cycles, of course he'll say, no, I will not supply until you pay me. After all, he's also actually sourcing his money from the banks.
That's true.
So it has become a quagmire for the whole system. So that's even at the electricity tariff of the bill I told you of ₦500 million naira. It was of previous. So that's what's telling you people were struggling even with that previous tariff.
Okay.
So that's why when the time came for us to write these letters, we said there should be a very special tariff for us. And it's a coincidence, that, a good coincidence, that even those in the education sector were also asking for the same.
Professor Raji, I'd like to ask a question. You talked about the NHIA and talked about the fact that patients under that scheme get to pay less than what they should pay. I thought the way the scheme operates is that you're being reimbursed the balance, some other time. Let us know how that works. That's one. Then two, you talked about consumables and you're paying with what you get, the subvention you get from the federal government. So what happens to the bills that the patients pay? That's two. Then three, for a hospital like the National Hospital, for example, you charge almost at par with some private institutions, hospitals. The difference very slim. I'm talking about the National Hospital. The difference very slim in some, maybe not cancer like you mentioned, but of course other health services that you render. So if private institutions can function without any form of assistance from the government in terms of paying salaries, in terms of allocation and all of that, why is the National Hospital having a challenge?
You have got your facts wrong, completely wrong, on all those three that you've mentioned. If you're talking about NHIA, except about a few weeks ago when they said that they were raising some tariffs by 60%. The tariff was never changed for 12 years. So if you are buying chloroquine, even let me say 2 years ago, or let me say Lona, 2 years ago, at 350. As of now, if you go to the shop, how much do you get it? At least 2,500 to 3,000. And we were expected to give that, but when, to give the patients at 2,500, but at a tariff of the previous 12 years ago that was set. You understand? Of 3,500.
So how do private hospitals who are also under the NHIA scheme operate?
That's why some of these private hospitals, they have a different set of medications. They go and buy very cheap drugs to sell for patients. Sometimes with the risk of that is you give drugs that are really not very effective, fake drugs and things like that. You understand? So, and it has caused a lot of problems. Most public hospitals some private hospitals actually shun away from NHIA patients. I'm sure you're aware.
Mm-hmm.
National Hospital has 70% of the patients are NHIA patients. So you can imagine the bleeding we are suffering from. Fortunately, now that with the new...
If a hospital is bleeding, who takes care of that?
Of course, as a CEO, that's why we're crying out. You understand? And it's out of the bigger resources that you have that you are able to do these little things. And somebody was talking about alternative energy. Okay, still, let me call back to for instance, our charges in National Hospital. You have got that fact right. I mean, that fact very, very wrong. It's never even close to what you find at the National Hospital, at the private facility. Not even close. If you have our surgeries, for instance, a major surgery, a neurosurgery, that should be charged 5 to 6 million naira elsewhere, 10 million somewhere. You have it at 350 to 450,000 at the National Hospital. That's how many percent rebate? So it cuts across all our sets of services. When you see deliveries, which is one of the commonest things that people see, in fact, a number of times when patients go to some hospitals here in Abuja, say, no, go to National, we have it almost for free, but especially if you are an NHIA patient. When you go to a private hospital here, in fact, I know a hospital where they charge 15 million for a CS. So you cannot compare with the National Hospital where you just go and pay some few, in fact, less than 100,000. So those are where people need to really have facts right. Maybe if you come into the hospital, see what we do, you might be our advocate these days. And he mentioned something about alternative energy. A number of the hospitals have tried to get that working. Unfortunately, it's also not as easy. People would think that these things are easy, but they are not. First, you come with, they give you an envelope during budget appropriations, an envelope budget of, say, 2 billion naira. When you need to expand your services, you need to fix some big machines. You need to buy some more new machines. You need to buy the things people would use in the ORs within this 2 billion naira. And then you are expected to get a source of alternative energy. I assure you that thing is really not cheap. If you are talking about solar power now, for you to set up a system, you have to spend billions of naira. If you are to, hospitals, like we said, are high energy consuming entities. So, like the National Hospital now, yes, we have tried in this 2024 budget to start setting up, what do you call them, solar systems. Okay. And also, graciously, the Federal Minister of Health, the ministers have really worked hard to get some special intervention from government to get solar power or alternative energy into some hospitals. They have selected some for this season. By next year, they will do some others, so like that. But then it will not be able to cover for all the systems. And then there are some certain equipment, like the equipment in some big hospitals, like National Hospital, that when they are on, or when you're putting them on, there's so much energy consumption at once. So are you sure solar will be able to provide that surge in energy that you need at once? So that's why the question of energy mix comes in. And We, at the National Hospital, when I came in, one thing I made sure was that there must be light. If you go to National Hospital from, let me say, from the second week that I came till now, light never goes off beyond a few seconds. You can go and test. Once light goes off for up to 1 minute, then there must be a very, very serious problem. And I think that's
so how have you been surviving with that? How have you been able to meet up with that?
That's why we are crying out. It's really difficult.
All right.
It's really difficult.
Okay.
So we have also gotten some other private organizations to come present to us, see how they will be able to set up their own systems, whether gas plants, CNGs, or whatever, or solar, and then they give us tariff that we'll pay over time. Then we'll be something like BOQ, or we can just keep running a PPP till forever. But then even that, because of the cost of putting this infrastructure in place, they have to also borrow from the bank. The charges from the banks are about 30% now, I think. So that also goes back onto us. The tariff they give us, by the time you make a calculation, you discover that it's also exorbitant. It's really some very, very difficult thing. I think this needs critical thinking, where all the important stakeholders will need to come, sit down, look at a very a workable solution long term.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Mahmood.
Thank you.
The critical stakeholders still need to converge to examine the, workable solution and long term. But at least this immediate short-term assistance that government has given to these critical sectors now. We've examined, Jide, let me bring you in now. We've examined the challenges despite this subsidy now, but we still know that there are benefits. When we look at this subsidy, it will go a long way, just like Professor Mahmood said and Professor Lillian noted. At least it will ease the tension in these two critical sectors. Now we're looking at the implementation now, because another major challenge that they may face is the implementation or the disbursement of this subsidy. How do you advise that this, be handled?
Well, the good news is that in this century, 21st century, data is life. You work with data. And with the click of a button, you know how many of these institutions are going to benefit. I believe that from the time that pronouncement was made, they must have been working with different data. What will be the starting point? Because the day a pronouncement is made is not the day it will take effect. And it may take a bit of time, unlike in the private sector where things happen so fast. In the public bureaucracy, and more so, it has to be interministerial. Okay. Because now you have to sit down with the Minister of Energy, Minister of Power. We don't have Minister of Energy, Minister of Power. And even Minister of Power alone cannot pull it off. He has to bring in the discourse. And don't forget, the only control that Ministry of Power has is over Transition Company of Nigeria, TCN. That is the one that government still keeps to itself. And that means it just helps to transmit from the GENCOs to the DISCOs. Now, the DISCOs have to sit with government to say, okay, these are the liabilities of each of these institutions per state. And they now have to work out from what time the intervention will start. Is it from September? Is it from October? Or is it from January 2025? Because some of these things don't happen like snap of finger. More so when it comes to issue of budget. You could see that just recently, to be able to pay 70,000 minimum wage, the president has to do supplementary budget of over 3-point-something trillion. That's even for the minimum wage alone. Then another component of 3 trillion for another thing. So about 6-point-something trillion supplementary budget. I'm not sure this 50%, because when you add everything together, it may actually run into
trillions.
Trillions.
Yeah.
Depending on from what time you want to start. And do you also take note of okay, for a university like University of Lagos that said it owes 1 billion, are you going to say, okay, since you owe 1 billion, we are giving you 500 billion subsidy? Or is it going to be
500 million?
500 million subsidy? Or is it going to be prorated across to say, you know, all of this, like Prof said, needs critical thinking. And that's why it will take a bit of time for the implementation to take off. But I think, having said that, we can't run away from this critical thinking because that's what makes countries great. I would like to hear from Prof, both Professor Lillian Salami and Prof in the studio, how has other climes, how have they dealt with their own? Nigeria is said to be a giant of Africa. We cannot continue this lamentation forever. Yes, because we must be problem solving. Problem will not disappear because you lament about them. It's not because you agonize about them that problem will disappear. Problem will only be solved when you sit down, face it, and analyze and think out what possible solutions you want to take.
Now, talking about critical thinking, Ajide Ojo, you talked about this whole subsidy thing. I want you to look at other kinds of subsidies we've had in this country and how they have turned out. You made a point about with the amounts given to each institution be the same, spread across board and all of that. And then we know that subsidy can be a big elephant in a way, such that other things could go on in a bid to do that. Would you say that another way around this would be a better initiative, such that maybe a different tariff, or putting these institutions on a different band and not on the general band A and all of that, just so that there's transparency in the whole process?
You know, the irony of it, Larry, is that even early this year, Aso Rock itself was embarrassed when there was a threat to disconnect the light to Aso Rock for owing. Unless I read wrongly. It was in the news. January this year, Ministry of Defense, Army headquarters, they were all owing. Huge sums of money were being owed Abuja Electricity Distribution Company. How they have been able to resolve their own, I don't know. But it tells you the story that why we single out education and health because of their critical nature. Look at federal secretariat. Go there. How has those ministries been running? You go there most times, for those who are in RIS building, you cannot even use the elevator because there is no light for most parts. And they only put on the gen for maybe 2 hours per day because of the budget constraint. So what we need to do is to start looking. This whole energy mix thing has been touted and we have been debated, and it's time to implement. How do we pilot? If it would take to pilot. For instance, what I would say is an intervention that could help is that government can say in 10 years, we want to make X number of health institutions to be self-sufficient in energy production. So let government invest, if it's 10 billion that will make national hospital to be off the grid and produce, because we have companies, very big multinational companies that are self-sufficient in energy. They know they have to provide this energy for themselves to be able to run their businesses successfully. You get? And if we use that model, if government will have to buy the bullet, we are doing 30 trillion naira road from Lagos to Calabar. If we need to invest 10 trillion to make these two sectors energy sufficient, if we have to go and borrow that money, because as you have rightly pointed out, Larry, subsidy, there is always the corruption element in subsidy. it has never really worked in the true sense of it. That's why Mr. President, one of his earliest pronouncements at inauguration is subsidy on PMS is gone. But we have seen where it has landed us. So if it will mean to have it in phases, to provide energy, that they will have a department of engineering, it will just be maintenance. You know, it will not be like diesel, but something that may be more cost effective for them. But we are talking of renewable energy. If it's GCNG, I don't know. The experts will tell you this. Engineers, you know, scientists. There's different energy mix, and that's why I'm talking of models from other countries,
okay,
whether African or abroad, that have been deployed, that have made them to be energy sufficient. Because there is none of these two institutions, health and education, that can survive without. And you know the irony of it. The moment there is no light on campus, you start a looter.
Mm-hmm.
But Professor Lillian said something, which is something that we are running away from again, about paying more for education.
In fact, that's...
If we don't pay more to enable these institutions to be able to successfully pay their running cost, we may actually be postponing the doomsday. Because by the time, I mean, we have had our own story. We've heard from Unilag, we've heard from Prof, we've heard from other institutions.
Okay.
If we don't find a way, it's a dicey catch-22 situation. Parents are bleeding, they don't have enough. But if it will take some little additional, you know, 50,000, 100,000 marks that each student is able to pay, that will be able to help them to also offset some of the running costs.
Okay, thank you very much, Jide. Let's go to Professor Lillian now. I mean, Jide has raised some vital questions. One that I want to actually ask is, how are the universities in other climes are managing these kind of challenges? And also, he just mentioned, you know, asking students to pay extra money. I mean, this has been a contentious issue for the past, only God knows, students not wanting to pay additional, and the university is still battling, you know, with all these challenges. How do you, you know, handle this kind of a situation?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me clearly state here that TEDFund has been doing a lot in trying to revive research and development in universities. When this, of course, came up, we actually brought in all experts in the area of electricity, electronics, engineering, to come up and give us both short, medium, and long term, how we can go about getting ourselves alternative electricity source, so that we can at least less depend on these distribution companies. Now we are working on that, but I must clearly state here that electricity generation is not a child's play. It's quite capital intensive. Last year or 2 years ago, TEDFund took some of us, professors, to some of the countries generating their own electricity from their universities. And I think one that comes behind is and while we were discussing, I am sure that my colleagues can even attest to the fact that the billions of dollars that went into that university just to be sure that they were generating enough electricity such that not only were they selling to their immediate, you know, companies or, areas of, working areas in that same country, Morocco. So what we need in the university, like I continue to say, it's not that we don't have the human resources, but we don't have the financial resources to back this. And like I said, we have put in place now committees to come up with short, medium, and long term. Now, the case of asking students to pay, you know that is an area we can't even go to. My university, for instance, for those of you who read about the stories and then the social media, cry of University of Benin shutting down as a result of electricity, because the students actually demanded that they needed extra hours of electricity supply, which we couldn't meet, because at that point, BEDC, our own local distribution company, had cut us off, had disconnected us. So we were trying to use diesel to give a few hours per day, and the student didn't want that. And we were clearly told that, they were not going to add anything to the school charges that they're paying now. I'm sure those who have tried, we know right now, is because of the students not wanting to add or pay additional charges as a result of the huge electricity bills that the university is grappling with. So that is not there. So we are doing the much that we can, and I must tell you that, and I think all universities are doing that. But we need capital, we need funds to drive this so that we can also, in our own way, generate electricity. And I think ab initio, as we started, I told you the alternative we gave when we wrote a letter to His Excellency through the Honorable Minister, that we gave 3 areas. One is to return to status quo, which isn't the best thing, because that really would be a short-term, approach. The second was to have a special tariff for universities and hospitals, which are, of course, social entity establishments. And then the other one is to empower universities or empower, research development, so that we can get alternative electricity. And I think unless this is done, really, these are only going to be short-term. And I have emphasized here that the 50%, yes, we welcome that, but that is not going to take us out of the woods. We are still going to, grapple with the fact that we may not be able to pay even after the 50%. I just did a quick mathematics in my own case, where I'll have to come up with 490 million per month. And it's almost impossible. I don't think we can do that. So that's where we are.
And Salami, thank you so much, for, being point blank about this whole issue, and the fact that the subsidy is not even good enough. And listening to Professor Raji earlier, he talked about the fact that hospitals are bleeding. And just like Professor Salami, I would like to ask, do you think this subsidy would bring palliative care or curative care, to the problem in the hospitals? Or you think that, like Jide Ojo has, mentioned, that we should look at what other hospitals are doing in other climes and probably take a cue from them?
Yeah, thank you. The first question is if this 50% subsidy is good enough. I'd say coming from where we are, where we are currently, yes, it will help. At least, just like one of your colleagues mentioned, it will relieve the pressure, but it will not take off the problem.
So it's palliative?
It's palliative. So, but we are still happy having this. Really, we are extremely happy because it will really, really reduce the pressure of us. We'll struggle, whatever it is we need to do to at least make this work. We will, definitely. But just like we said, it will be for the short term. We really need to sit down to discuss. And going to other climes to see what they do and bring it in, I think we need to be careful with that. We've made so many mistakes. There are so many mistakes that we could see. When you pick exactly what you see, a model that you see out there, to bring into a certain place. Every single environment you see has its own peculiarities. Nigeria is a very, very peculiar country. I was discussing with a friend, in my own opinion, Nigeria hardly ever goes along with any theory that you find in terms of a humanitarian theory. When you're talking about economics theory or whatever, we have put in all sorts of theories in Nigeria that works elsewhere, but will never, hardly ever work in Nigeria. Why? Because people fail to realize that every single environment has its own uniqueness. So That's why that critical thinking is really important of stakeholders. We need to sit down. Yes, it's good to have the model A, B, C from various countries, from various universities, various hospitals in other countries. But then also get experts of Nigeria in Nigeria to bring Nigerian data. See, and then we also need to learn to really run things, if you call it proof of concept, before you deploy. We are always in a rush. It's good to sit down. By the time we bring those models, we'll see, okay, model A, model B, we merge. We have our own Nigerian whatever. Then do proof of concept in 1 or 2 places before we deploy. That may be the solution. But we need to start early. For you to have such a model in everything means that you need to have some bit of time to do that. We should never be in a hurry. If you are in a hurry, we will still be falling into this same problem we've been falling in. And this is not peculiar to only the electricity, whatever. If you look at virtually a number of our situations in Nigeria, that's the same problem we are in.
Okay. Okay, Prof. Thank you very much for that. Because of our time, we still have another conversation coming up shortly. So we're just going to have a parting shot now. Jide, let me just ask you for your own parting shot. Because, I mean, no doubt this government is a listening government. The government is not only listening, but is responding, to the yearnings of the people. I mean, by responding, by giving this subsidy, also is a response, a positive response from government. So the way forward now, what other initiatives do you think the government can, adopt in this circumstance to further ease the tension, in these 2 critical sectors?
We've said it in all of the interventions my senior colleagues and I have said earlier. For me, I've said if we need to have an energy intervention fund, if we have to go and borrow, let's borrow to have a permanent solution. They are social sector, so if all government institutions were to charge cost-reflective price, cost-reflective bills, many of us will not be able to afford. So they have to keep the services low, and for them to keep it low, somebody must pick the bills. And that is why we need to help the institutions. I know that, yes, government is doing something, but it has to be significant because it's part of our human rights. It's part of what is in Section 14, subsection 2B of the Constitution, which says security and welfare of citizens shall be the primary purpose of government. This is about well-being and welfare of citizens. So if National Hospital is accessible, it affords ordinary citizens like me opportunity to go for health care rather than going for self-medication and all of that. So we need to look for a more lasting solution. This is commendable, but I want the government to expedite action so that it doesn't become an emergency.
Okay, government should expedite action. Okay, thank you. Let's bring in Professor Salami now for just your last parting shots.
Thank you very much. Just to build on the last speaker, we thank the federal government for their intervention, but that, of course, isn't going to take hold. What might, even for the short term, is to have a dedicated tariff for tertiary institutions, and then also to invest for research. At least our research output can help us pave a way in getting alternative electricity. And I must state here that even when we go to other places to look at what they are doing, we often come domesticate. Nobody picks any research from anywhere and drive it here in the country because it may not work. So we come in here and domesticate and see how we can marry those outputs from the areas we go to pick them, and then what works in here. We cannot reinvent the wheel most times, but we need to build on what has been invented. So thank you very much.
Salami, because of time, just in 20 seconds, I'd like to respond to this. I spoke with some students, on, when this broke about the subsidy, and, some students were optimistic about it and hoping that universities in turn would also allow this flow to them such that charges will reduce. Do you think that's going to be possible?
But the students, what they hear on social media, they take and run with, oh yes, federal government, and so now they're going to get light for 24 hours. I have just illustrated, I've used my university, that even with the 50%, when it comes, it's going to still put us on a platform where we may not be able to survive, paying 190. It's not from anywhere. And then this same student who will be now demanding, next few weeks, you're going to see them aluta. Now the federal government has given us 50%. You must give us 20 hours of electricity. It's unrealistic. I said that this is a very short-term intervention. We must go beyond now. Either we get special, tariff for dedicated to universities because of our peculiarity, unless the students are willing to pay. And I can bet my last penny that they're not. Parents are not willing to pay because of the economic situation that we all find ourselves in. So please, we need to have a more realistic, electricity power that can make smile and bring smile to the institution, both the governance of the institution, the students, the staff, and everyone. Right now, like I said, how do you carry out research when we are still load shedding? In my university, sometimes we give 4 hours, 5 hours. Who can carry effective research work? Or even the students. So we are.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof, for that. We have totally run out of time now. And just in 60 seconds, not more than 60 seconds, your parting shot.
I would wish to thank the federal government, particularly the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, for taking this wonderful initiative.
Okay.
It's a big relief, and I thank all those that have pushed this to fruition. That's our honorable ministers, both for health and education, for pushing this, and the people on the ground that have also done all this. And we, as the committees of CMDs, are really happy with this, and we will ensure that as it is now, we'll do what we can to really work with what is on ground.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mohammed Mahmood Raji, Professor of Neurosurgery and Chief Medical Director, National Hospital. Thank you so much for this conversation this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Also, let me thank our regular on the program, Jide Ojo, Public Affairs Analyst. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Have a great week ahead.
And also, I want to appreciate Professor Lilian Salami, Vice Chancellor, University of Benin. Thank you so much for your contribution this morning. Well, that's for this conversation. We'll take a break now. The second conversation will kick off immediately after the break. Stay with us.
The federal government of Nigeria wants vandals of national assets, electricity transmission towers, cables, and other facilities to desist from this act of sabotage. Vandalism is a serious crime punishable under the law. Vandalizing electrical equipments will affect millions of Nigerians, including your loved ones. Remember that national assets belong to all of us, hence the need to protect them. Report all cases of suspicious movement around electrical facilities to security agencies. When you see something, say something. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation in collaboration with the National Counter-Terrorism Center, NCTC, Office of the National Security Advisor.
Relief is coming. More wages, reduced costs. Nigeria's national minimum wage is now 70,000 naira and it will be reviewed every 3 years. The federal government will commence immediate implementation and state governments are being encouraged to follow suit. With the presidential CNG initiative, transport costs are coming down. Are you a car owner or a transporter? Visit www.pci.gov.ng to find out how you can benefit from switching to CNG. This is the renewed hope.
Meet lovebirds Jayola and Adama Davies. Their dream of living together as man and wife has finally been fulfilled.
The latest couple in town. Hey! Mr. and Mrs. Jaye Davis!
but an invasion by their troublesome families was not a scenario they bargained for. Her mother moves in. His mother shows up with his little niece. Then her younger sister joins the scramble.
You want to stay?
Married life suddenly becomes very complicated even before it started. Follow their story on this channel as they confront every challenge as it comes. Family forever, the story of our lives.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
You have to move from the point where you protect and defend your religion to a point where you also recognize the rights of the other person, of the other religion, and protect it. So if I am protecting my own territory and my own people and trying to emphasize their rights and protect their rights, I should also be thinking about how to protect the rights of the others.
Both Islam and Christianity recognize and defer to God, and both recognize the temporariness of the life of this world, and that ultimately we all go back to God for the day of reckoning, when everybody will render an account of his life on this temporary abode.
All right, welcome back. Still good morning, Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. And to our second topic, which borders on the engineering profession and Nigeria's prosperity, as the 32nd Engineering Assembly of the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, COREN, gets underway. Now, the nation's top engineers and stakeholders are gathering to shape the future of the profession.
Yeah, Larry, with the theme Regulating Engineering Profession for Shared Prosperity in Nigeria, this year's assemble comes at a critical junction in our nation's development as Nigeria strives for economic growth, infrastructure development, and global competitiveness. The role of engineers has never been more crucial.
Now, COREN will delve into pressing issues such as professional standards, innovation, and collaboration, aiming to harness the power of engineering for the benefit of all Nigerians.
Yeah, Yere, we are now joined by our guest who will tell us more about how engineering is shaping our nation's destiny. First, I'd like to introduce Professor Sadiq Zuba Abubakar. Is the President Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, COREN. Professor, you're welcome once again.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
All right.
And also here for the conversation, of course, also an engineer, Olu Ogunduyile, the Vice President, COREN. He's also the Chairman Organizing Committee for the 32nd Engineering Assembly. It's a pleasure to have you, and good morning, Nigeria, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
All right, let's just start with Professor Abubakar, who is the President of COREN, and let's find out how does COREN plan to strengthen regulation and enforcement to ensure professional standards in the engineering sector.
Thank you very much. We are very delighted to announce to the country and even in the diaspora the 32nd Assembly of Engineering Practitioners. Actually, it's not engineers. Engineering practitioners, because in the family of engineering practitioners, we have the engineers, we have the technologies, we have the technicians, the craftsmen, and the artisans. All these are within what you call the engineering family. And I would like to also declare that Perhaps the Engineering Assembly is one of the largest gathering of professionals in this country. For the last 32 years, even this year so far, I think yesterday we were counting the registration, we have counted over 10,000 participants that are physically. And then we have now also allowed what you call the virtual participation. About
3,000. 10,000 physical.
Yes, and then about 3,000 virtually
that's
across the globe, all over. Basically, I think COREN has been in existence for the last, since 1972. To be able to do basically two things. To standardize the training and education of all these category of engineering practitioners, to also ensure that they have continuous professional development, to update their skill, their competencies, and their proficiencies. And then finally, to be able to regulate the practice of these category of practitioners. Regulation of the practice from the two perspectives. From what you call conduct of ethics, we have our, benchmarking and what have you that you are supposed to do when you are practicing. And then most importantly, what you call code and standards. What you are supposed to do in terms of executing your practice or producing a product or whatever you are doing. Now, this would be consistent in it.
Okay.
And for us to be able to do it, first we have two categories. Every person that undergo a training from a formal or informal training institution need to be certified and registered so that we'll be able to regulate the registrants.
Okay.
They have the associations like the Nigerian Society of Engineers, Nigerian Association of Technologists, NATI, about 5 different associations. But we, as regulators, we have what we call the registrants. We don't have members. Registrant that we regulate, and regulation means you monitor their practice, you enforce compliance to all those standards, and if there is infraction or there is misconduct, you investigate it, and then if it is light, you warn the person. If it is deep, you now escalate the matter to what you call the disciplinary tribunal, where you can sanction and you can withdraw licensing. So many of the sanctions you can apply.
All right, Professor,
as the case may be.
Professor Abubakar, listening to you keenly, I hear you talk about COREN being consistent in training, regulating, monitoring, enforcing compliance, and you say COREN has been there for about 52 years now. Yes. So how come quackery is still with us and we still have a lot of misconduct in the profession?
Well, basically two things. Quackery become popular because of the patronization of non-registrants by companies, by development bodies, by estate developers, by clients, because they want to have a very cheap but low quality service. If you are a qualified practitioner, the charges for a service are high, and often they go around, they look for quacks who, with any amount, they will come, and we normally identify, and we normally furnish, we normally, but if you look at our country and then you look at the registered members that we have, there is grossly inadequate of the professionals, both in the public and the private sector. This is one. Second, when you have misconduct, often, we still have a gap in the area of what we call establishment of documentation that will allow us to do forensic investigation, to be able to track who is culpable on something. If you don't document the procedure, if for instance you take a construction sector, while you are doing construction, and then you don't document who designed, who approved the design, all those procedures, you don't have the requisite documentation that you can verify. When you come to displaying or you come to furnish the empirical evidence that you require to be able to conclude the disciplinary tribunal process. You know, we have what you call assessors, legal assessors to the caliber of sons. So it's a typical court when you go to our disciplinary tribunal, and if you don't have the evidences, then you begin to wander, you know, around the process. But that area of documentation, to be able to have forensic, you know, investigation where you can say, okay, this is at this point, this is the person that is culpable, or this organization, or this and this. These are some of the, I think, the gaps that addresses some of this valid observation.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Abubakar. Let's come to the Vice President of Koren, Engineer Olu Oguduyile. Now, you are the chairman, organizing committee for the 32nd Engineering Assembly of Koren. Tell us about this assembly. What are the expectations?
Thank you very much. The assembly is the largest gathering of engineering practitioners in Nigeria, and I would say even in the globe, because we are having the academia, the industrialists, the development promoters, the practitioners all gathered together. Like the president just said, we are having, yesterday when we were looking at our register, we have about 8,000. Now we're having 3,000 outside. Then we're having some virtual people all over the world, about 11,000 people that are the practitioners that will witness this. And there will be many others that will be joining on site that will come and register, who are not registered before. Now, we have, of course, we normally do our events at ICC, but because of the renovation that is taking place, we are using the dome, this dome center at the central area there. And we have actually made proper planning. We're having the events in the main dome. We're having the exhibition at the back, because there's expanse of land at the back there. We're having people. We want to promote what we call local content. Okay. Nigerian manufacturers who are actually manufacturing, like Coleman. We have Nigerians who are practicing oil and gas, like Dover Engineering. We have Proforce, who actually manufacture armored cars for the armed forces. Those people will display their wares, what they are doing. And apart from that, you know, when we are looking at this engineering assembly, it is actually mandatory. It is actually, you must have what you call, to be able to collect your practicing license, because it we call it MCPD. You must, this engineering assembly is one of the flagship program of Koren, because in this sector, we need to come together to see the development of regulation that will affect all critical sectors. We need to come together where you will look at it as a stakeholder and look at the critical gaps. How do we fill the gaps? And then as a family to talk about it, and then to be able to come strong. We know to talk about this issue of Executive Order 5. We need to promote indigenous engineers to be able to come forth and then develop, and then they'll be promoted. The policymakers that are coming will listen and see the area where we need to have, where they need to promote Nigerians. And then you see, engineers have no place to be unemployed. There are enough things to do in this country. We need to actually develop ourselves, give ourselves opportunities. If there are need for collaboration, if people want to come from abroad, they will practice with the local people here, so that we call capacity development will be there. These are the issues that we actually want to address in this particular forum.
All right, many thanks, Engineer Oguduyile. You talked about the fact that with this conference, MCPD, if you like, the practicing license will be given to engineers.
Yes, to engineers.
Is that why you have that large number, knowing that people just want to get a license? How do you want to validate that these people who will be getting practicing license as a result of attendance in this conference still have the requisite skill to continue to practice?
Of course. There are items, there are things to be done. One, not only attendance at the assembly. There are seminars, there are webinars, there are trainings, there are training that you have to actually involve in. We must see, there must be proof. If you're having maybe 100 marks, if the assembly has 25, there are other 75 to be fulfilled. Don't forget that even as a regulator of engineers, we also manage and regulate those the associations. They have seminars, They have training programs that they have to do. And these are we're making it mandatory so that people will update themselves and get themselves updated. So before you can, we need to fill the form. Oh, do you attend this? Which seminar do you attend? What training do you attend? How do you update yourself? So these are the areas that we'll use to be able to maybe graduate people to say, okay, yes, this one is practicing.
And then how do you ensure that those who are going to be participating, practice in the country? We're having a serious challenge in our hand, the Jackpot challenge, people, exiting the country, people getting trained here and going elsewhere to practice and all of that. So how are you trying to deal with that challenge within your own body?
That is not a big issue. It's fact. It will be another level of foreign exchange earning. Don't forget, Korean and South Africa, that is Korean for Nigeria and South Africa, they are the only two bodies that have joined the Washington Accord, the prestigious Washington Accord. That shows our certificate is attainable all over the world. Okay. That shows that even though if you go, look, check a country like India as a country. You have a lot of their practitioners in and around the world. They bring in foreign exchange earning into their country, up to about maybe $4 trillion every year, dollars. If you have that into this, it will strengthen our naira. And apart from that, when you now train people here locally, see, government also has a role to play. The role to play is not only that maybe we train people here, government must create an enabling environment where industry will crop up, and then we have production economy. When production economy comes in here, people will be gainfully employed, and there'll be a lot of things to do here locally.
Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Ogunduile. Now let's go back to the president now of the Koren, Professor Abubakar. Just like he said, I mean, Koren is doing a lot of things now, especially to develop the capacity of the engineers. Now, what do you think the government can do, to actually encourage to promote indigenous engineers, to actually partake in the economic development and growth of this nation?
Thank you very much. I think there is already an existing framework.
Okay.
I'll look at it from two perspectives, the formal and the informal sector. In the formal sector, where you have the universities, the polytechnics, the monotechnics, and the technical colleges, it has been recognized since the 70s that aside the education that somebody will get and get certificated, you also must have what she mentioned, what we call the MCPD, Mandatory Professional Development, to be able to keep you up to date with four things: knowledge gap, skill gap, proficiency gap, and proficiency gap. And because of that, ITF was established in this country. And the industries are paying 1% of whatever they have to ITF. That money is being kept in trust to be able to allow the graduates in sciences and engineering to have what we call the SAWES and the SWEV. And one important aspect which hitherto has not been well promoted, what we call engineering residency. It's mandatory, just like in the medical residency and other things, before you go to NYSC. Now, we have for over 30 years slowed down on that engineering residency. We are now resuscitating it because of the unemployability of our graduates, especially in the engineering and science segment. That aspect of the provision of funds to train students during education, with the hands-on, and when they graduate, to have that mandatory 1-year residency that will allow them to go into their subsectors to really deepen the skill and the proficiency and the competencies. We are indeed, appealing seriously to the government to allow the engineering bodies like the regulators and the association to synergize with ITF, like MBTE, like NUC, like MAN, Koren, synergize with ITF to be able to ensure that we deploy that resources, because ITF is a fund, and they are giving that fund in trust for Nigerians, youth Nigerians to be able to be trained. Now, this is one aspect, the formal sector. The informal sector, I'm happy to inform you that this current administration has formalized what we call the National Skill Council, where the vice president of this great nation is the chairman, the Minister of Education and Aliko Dangote are the co-chairs, and then we have some governors, some key critical ministers. Koren is a member, NUC is a member, MBT and MAN and other things. Now, this second initiative to us is a great opportunity for the country to move into the informal sector, where you have millions of artisans that are not classified, that are not certified, and that are not licensed and regulated. Now, this council is doing that now. And at this assembly, one of the councils, what you call Sector Skill Council for Engineering, is going to be inaugurated by the Senior Special Assistant of Mr. President on Technical, Vocational and Entrepreneurial Education. And of course, MBTE and NUC are, and even probably the Minister of Education may come. Now, this is one aspect that we really have to make sure that the human capital in this our sector, engineering and sciences, is given the full attention, which we know is one of the key goals of this current administration, to be able to ensure that we indeed have the requisite, skills. And happily, one of the global players, the chairman of what we call the Dublin Accord. Dublin Accord is a section of the International Engineering Alliance. Has arrived yesterday. He's the keynote speaker during this assembly, and he's going to guide Nigeria to package itself so that we can make an application for Nigeria to join what we call Sydney Accord for the technicians and technologies, and Dublin Accord for the craftsmen and artisans. We have already, like the Vice President said, we have already been admitted in the Washington Accord for
What's the benefit of joining those accords? What's the benefit of joining those accords?
Good. The benefit of joining those accords is that they will come and study your educational ecosystem and your training ecosystem. Once they find them comparable, competitive with the global standard, it means when you have a registered craftsman in Nigeria, he can go to anywhere
in the world
because he has been found now.
That encourages the Japa phenomenon also. So that leads me to my question now, because listening to Engineer Gundiyile, he talked about the fact that foreign exchange comes in as a result of the Japa phenomenon, as it being not a problem. So the question is, having those who are well trained leave the country and then leaving us with, if you like, quacks, and for the civil engineering sector, for example, we're having collapsed buildings and people dying.
Yes.
So which, if you want to lay it at, side by side, which should we be encouraging at this point in time in our country? And then tell us, what's the major challenge of the engineering profession and how this convention would help to address it?
Good. Thank you. These are very excellent questions. You see, in the realm of development, you must plan immediate, medium, and long term. Because of JAPA, which is obvious because of the lack of the enabling environment, we will not relent not to train our professionals to be competitively globally. If we do that, then we are jettisoning our future. If you take the Asian tigers, let's go back to that, to history. It is the JAPA concept that they use to their advantage. They send the talents to these Western climes, and when even China, even India, that's what they did. When they now became gurus and became talented in skill, proficiency, and competencies, they came back. And then they domicile that capacity, and then they start rolling their own developmental agenda. We must, since having the opportunity, we have tested it at the engineering level. Nigeria is the second country in Africa, aside South Africa, that have joined the Washington Accord in the whole world, in the whole of Africa, only Nigeria and South Africa. And what that means is we are apart with Germany, with Japan, with US, in terms of the competency and capacity of engineers in the world. So if you are registered with Koren in Nigeria, you will straight away go and work in any company or in any parastatal in US or in any of the European countries or Asian countries. And we are desirous to repeat this same feat at the level of the technicians, the technologists, the craftsmen, and the artisans, because we know in the long run, this is what we need. And like I said, the second leg of the National Skill Council has allowed us to regulate even the artisans. You know, this non-formal sector, where you have millions of artisans. For instance, with this National Skill Council concept, framework, a vulcanizer in Nigeria down the road will be regulated.
Okay.
A vulcanizer will be regulated because it's an artisan, you know, in one of the segments, and he can be registered, he can be certified, and he can be regulated.
Okay, President, because of time, we just take a parting shot from Ogunduile. I mean, this assembly now, what should we expect in just 60 seconds, 30 seconds?
Okay. Well, the assembly will give us the opportunity for engineering practitioners to sit together to develop the regulating aspect of critical part of our economy. And also, it will allow us to see or strategize on how to fill the gaps.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Fantastic. Good way to leave the point, to leave the conversation. Fill the gaps, develop homegrown solutions. Of course, we want to see that. Professor Sadiq Zubair Abubakar, President, Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. Karen, it was a pleasure to have you again on the program. We wish you all the best in your assembly.
Thank
and
you.
Of course, Engineer Olu Ogunduyile, Vice President Karen, and Chairman Organizing Committee for the 32nd Assembly of Engineers. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation, and yes, wishing you all the best.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that's Good Morning Nigeria this Monday. Thank you so much for watching. Remain tuned to the NTA. I'm Yen Ray John.
And I'm Adimolade. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day.